I'd like to ask our esteemed panel to introduce ourselves, tell them what your company does, how many employees you have, I love it for context, and then your funniest, worst, whatever pricing story. Something that created drama, you did wrong, or was just interesting, or different, or a mistake you made, right? Tell me the number one learning that jumps out at you in the pricing broadly defined.
Start here?
Yeah, please.
Awesome. So I'm at Pfeil, Datastax. Datastax is a database company. We sell a database that's really good for cloud applications based on the open source project called Cassandra. If you have, Cassandra's used at a lot of different companies, from Netflix to companies like Spotify or Apple. So chances are you're probably interacting with it daily behind the scenes. To answer your question about the funniest one,
Yes.
well, number one is selling open source is remarkably hard, so that's a whole other discussion. But
how do you do that exactly? I'm still trying to learn myself.
A whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
I would say the funniest, in our first year of the company's creation, we had no idea what we were doing, and we had just started to put revenue goals in place, and we had no sales pipeline. And so on the day before the quarter closed, we walked into Netflix, and it wasn't a sales conversation, and we walked out with a six-figure check within a 45-minute period.
And it was the pressure of hitting that first-year plan that did it, that created the focus?
The quarter was, we realized we needed to get money for the first time.
I see.
And we said, let's go to the people that might like us, and it worked out.
And is that also how you manufactured your first pricing in that meeting right then and there?
No, actually.
No?
No.
No.
We had lightweight pricing before that, but it was all really small deals because, and I'm sure we'll get into this, we were actually underpricing our value significantly. And it was nice when you had a big number to hit for the first time that made you think, what's the actual value we're creating, and start working backwards off of that.
Got it. So aim high, have a tough quarterly goal, and force yourself to solve pricing to achieve the goal rather than... All right, that's a good story. Yeah, Jim, what's a little bit more about CircleCI and...
Yep.
It could be a horror story too. You pick whatever. It's just a story, the most vivid story, right?
Pricing at Circle is an ongoing horror story. I was watching that last presentation, and we have hit every mistake along the way. It's like stubbing our toe as we go. So we're a continuous delivery platform. We basically automate the process between commit to deploy. I'm sure we probably have some customers here. You can either do that in front of the firewall in our shared platform, or you can do that behind the firewall and run your own infrastructure. We literally haven't made every single pricing mistake on that list. And in terms of where we are, I mean, our biggest pricing horrors, we've been in the process of a probably 2 to 2.5 year pricing transition, trying to move away from what historically we've done on a resource basis, this idea of selling containers, into something in moving the overall pricing model and trying to move the market into a dynamic pricing model. And we are now end of 2017, so good, lucky 2.5 years into that.
All right,
great.
but does one piece of scar tissue stick out from that, one story? One terrible, anything you had to roll back, roll forward, roll left, roll down?
Everything?
Everything?
Yeah.
What was the worst pricing experiment you did?
What is the worst pricing experiment we did? Well, let me put it this way. Our existing pricing model is so good that is the larger, more active a customer gets, the less money we make off of them. Margin actually goes down. So
that can happen accidentally. It definitely can happen, right? If you have general real COGS associated with it, you get it wrong, then your margin plummet, right?
And to Christina's point from before, like you put that out, that's very hard to roll back. Yes. And so we're 2.5 years into a rollback.
And when you roll, I've learned this. When you do try to roll those back, do they churn? Do they all churn? Do you break the relationship with the customer, or can
sometimes you need to. Sometimes you need to walk away. Sometimes you just have to decide it's a bad relationship and you have to step back. But I think if you are creating enough value, customers will stick with you. And honestly, the power of product market fit is that usually you can sort of go through all of that nonsense over time. It just takes a while to kind of peel it back as you go.
Got it. All right, Simon, tell us about Fastly. We know a little bit. How many employees and what are you doing? How does it really work today, and your worst or best story?
So Fastly is a content delivery network. We got servers all over around the world, and we basically can accelerate and cache dynamic content, update instantly, move a lot of your logic to the edge. We opened up to the public in January 2012, so 6 years in January, which is terrifying.
Are you tired or are you reinvigorated after 6
I
years?
am psyched because other
Psyched?
people do all the work now. I
You
just
got to
gotta go-
get there by year 5.
I
If they
get to-
don't-
I
other
get to
people
events-
own the work. By
I get to
year
go to
5,
events
you
like
die.
this, so this is
Yeah.
good. We are about 400 employees now, and we had so many pricing disasters right at the start because we had no idea what we were doing. We're much better now. We have a really amazing pricing team. But I think kind of the funniest one was when a company paid us extra money to make sure that we did. They were like, can you just give us a platinum support contract just so we make sure you don't go out of business? And I was like, okay. But I think the stupidest thing we did was in our premium tier, we decided that the best way to attract people to our premium tier was to give them a pair of ski goggles with heads-up displays in them. And I have no idea. Like, I look back and think, why? Why did we think this was a good idea?
Yes.
And nobody ever asked for them. Like, we had plenty of people sign up for the tier. Literally
No one
nobody
cared.
asked for them.
No one wanted the bribe.
No, exactly.
Right?
It was weird.
Got it. And are you today, I should know this, where are you anchored? Are you anchored high versus other CDNs? How do you anchor your pricing?
Like I said, we had no idea at the start what we were doing.
Were you cheap in the beginning?
We basically picked CloudFront's pricing and then reduced it by 10%.
Well, I was going to ask everyone what their comp was.
Yeah.
So that was your comp.
That was our comp, but
and
then
you just said we'll do 90% of that to get some points on the board.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then really quickly we had people coming in with pretty custom deals. And what we were lucky about, we had really good metrics on what everything costs. So really quickly we were able to work out whether or not a deal was good for us or not. We could be really flexible about that. And so we went from there, but our anchoring, we always wanted list pricing. We always wanted people to have a general idea of what they were going to be paying, sort of general customers going to be paying even with an order of magnitude, and then we could go from there.
But now I don't want to even pretend I'm sort of any CDN expert or really know anything about the space at all. But there's commodity products, there's old products, there's new products, right? So I assume you're also anchoring as the better solution, right? So how much more value can you extract in a market like CDN when you have a best of breed solution? Can you get 20% more? It's probably hard to double industry pricing, right? I just don't know the answer. How much elasticity do you get when you're a premium differentiated product?
It kind of depends on the size of the competitor, and there's so many different factors going into it, depending on like geographically, what their geographic traffic is, whether they're bursty or not. In general. So there was this idea that CDNs were a commodity, that Akamai was this 800-pound gorilla in the room, that they were driving prices low, that basically you were reselling dumb bandwidth.
Yes.
And it was terrible. Nobody liked the market. The reason why we started the company was because we all hated what we were buying at the time, and it just didn't feel like it fitted with what we wanted to do. It felt like you were getting nickel and dimed on everything, that everything you wanted was just like that a little bit extra. You had to get professional service or anything. We hated that. So what we wanted to be was a lot more transparent, and we wanted to sell people smart bandwidth, not dumb bandwidth. And I know that sounds like a marketing term, but we wanted to give people value on top of the bandwidth rather than just shoving bits over it, and making it much easier to do stuff further away from your origin, and people would pay for that because it saves them money in the long run. If we offload work from their origin, then they're protected. Everything's faster, so they make money. They have like lower churn. They get lower abandoned shopping carts. It's good for them. They make money, and they get and because we've got economies of scale, it's cheaper for them. So that's how we're able to basically do it. Like rather than selling it, it's like, oh, we're just selling dumb bandwidth, and we'll nickel and dime you on the extras.
So just to summarize, and then Matt, I want to ask you about what your comp was if you had one. But you start off at 90% of your comp, right? Today, now that you have a brand and a strong presence in segments, is it 150% of what you think market is? I don't know, but did that 90 go to some? Did your gut tell you what you think the number is of market?
A list pricing is still pretty common with the other people in the market. It's pretty common with what CloudFront is, because that kind of but to be honest, like that's for smaller customers. None of our enterprise customers pay anywhere close to list, and we customize the price based on, because a video customer is going to be high volume, low number of requests. A sort of ad beacon is going to be high number of requests, low volume of bandwidth. Yep. So really, what we were able to do was have these underlying numbers, know exactly how much everything cost us, and then be able to go into deals and really customize stuff so people felt comfortable with us. And I think that was actually what really the secret was underneath, was having really good metrics.
And Matt, did you have a comp too? Is there any? You have science behind pricing? This open source pricing, what's the science behind free?
You just make up the numbers.
What's
and
that? I mean, we tried to. Is there science? And was there a good comp? What was the good comp, and what was the science?
So there's probably been 3 phases of how the company's done pricing at a macro level over the last 8 years. Back in 2010 was sort of the beginning of the so-called NoSQL companies rising, and there were at the time maybe a dozen or so. And so we literally came in and said, what's everyone else charging? Let's charge. We viewed ourselves as a premium offering, and so we did a 10 or 20% uplift on that.
So day one, you anchored high.
Anchored high at the
and
beginning.
Was it the pedigree of the team? What enabled you to anchor high?
The product reputation in the community, various communities.
From in year one, you had a strong you took that reputation and anchored high.
And then we doubled down over the next 2 years, and we probably went from a 10 or 20% premium to maybe a double. As we started, as it was adopted and you had more data points of use cases, we saw more and more mission critical use cases for our database as opposed to others in the field. So we increased pricing, and today list pricing is significantly higher as we focus more on sort of the scenarios where if that database fails, the company's probably not doing business. So it's truly mission critical at that point.
Yeah, and so when you have the reputation to back you up, obviously anchoring high, probably will make you more money. You could debate it, but did it make the sales process easier? Because you've got to pick a place in the market, right? You've got to pick somewhere.
There's 2 parts to that. It probably doesn't make the sales process easier. However, lowering your price for every, let's say you're trying to sell $1 million deal, let's say you're doing $100,000 deals and your goal is to get to $1 million. If you discount everyone 10%, then you've got to make up actually more than 10% in new deals to hit that number. Because think about it, 10% off of $1 million is 900,000, but 900,000 plus 10% is not $1 million.
Yes.
So you actually, anytime you lower your price, even by 10%.
And you think the sales team understands this?
No, you don't tell the sales team, but you do say, look, every time you discount, you actually have to do more work to make that up. So you just put rules in place saying they can't discount, or you set the price higher to adjust for that. But you dig your feet in a little bit. It might extend the sales cycle by days or weeks, but it's easier than finding more significant deals.
Got it.
More number of significant deals.
So that's an interesting topic. But as you're anchoring high and you're getting to bigger deals, managing discounting maybe is one of the most important parts of pricing in and of itself, isn't it? So you put SLAs in early and narrow bars on it. What's the key? What's the secret sauce there? Hiring a good head of sales ops, or how do you implement it?
I really think it's great management. I don't think you should discount. Have a very logical, minimize discounting significantly. Yeah. Because the amount of work you have to do to make that up is non-trivial, and especially most enterprise software companies I found are some form of land and expand. So that initial price point is literally going to probably drop from a per unit price over the course of time. Our case, we found that our initial deal size was probably somewhere between high 5 figures or low 6 figures, but through expansion efforts, you could increase that by an order of magnitude or more over 2 to 3 years. So go from 100 grand to $1 million maybe. But if your discount price per unit is set at a significantly lower price at the beginning, you're really screwing up your revenue 2 years down the line from that account.
Forever.
Yeah, you're screwed.
Can you have to grandfather the early customers in that took a bet on you?
As you add new functionality, you can raise prices.
Yes.
But the
with
question
that
is how
core
much,
initial
it's
offering,
hard.
can you really jack the price up on the same offering?
It's very difficult.
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. So.
Like not discounting at the beginning.
Yes.
Is very important.
And Jim, if you've had like a dozen different pricing models, how have you dealt with grandfathering?
We just do it.
You just do it.
But
you've probably, I'm just taking some of your stories on their face, but if you've done 12 different experiments, you've got 24 grandparents out there to potentially manage, right?
We do.
Yeah, a lot of grandparents.
We do. We have a lot out there. They're fun. What do we do from a grandfathering perspective? Basically, what we try and do is every time there's a major functionality upgrade, we try and use that as a trigger to get folks to move along. It creates situations where you have people stuck behind gates that don't want to upgrade, but over time, our pricing is so de minimis compared to the value that we think that we're providing that most people end up kind of coming through eventually. And so it takes some time, but they eventually get there.
Yeah. Simon, was it you talking about services for a minute earlier, I think? Might have been you, Matt, right? Talk about services revenue, right? I was having a discussion and how that fits with pricing. I was having a discussion with a great founder here, business doing over 20 million, they're just adding services and was worried about how much you can charge for it. I think this is a missing part of at least some pricing discussion, because there can be you can have huge sensitivity on pricing, but tacking on 20 or 30% to deploy something in the real world sometimes is the easiest money in the world to get. Maybe even open source it's even easier, I don't know. But any thoughts on any learnings from services?
We always knew we were essentially a developer platform for people to build on. Like, we're a content delivery network, but there's this platform that you can build on. So we knew we needed really, really great services. We needed really great customer support. We knew our customer support needed to be engineering. And before I started Fastly, I was at Zendesk. So Zendesk really kind of taught me that amazing customer service is just worth every penny that you spend on it. So what we kind of found was that really, really small customers don't want to pay for professional services. Sort of our medium, like really high-tech customers, like GitHub and stuff like that, they've got the technical expertise and the time and the sort of flexibility to be able to play around with stuff themselves. So they really just want good customer support. So in the beginning, we used to have an IRC channel that we'd set up for them. That's how old school we are.
Yep.
Eventually, we
no charge for that. That's for
no
sure,
charge.
right?
And it was actually really good, because instead of people opening tickets with us, then we just had this really, really rapid evolution, and people love that. In fact, we had a public IRC channel, and the moment I realized that maybe we'd done something right was when I went on there in the morning and I realized the customers in Europe had been helping other customers while we weren't there. And I was like, this is good. This is a good thing. We should encourage this. And now we've moved everything to Slack. Now that we've moved into more enterprise customers, they are much more willing to have to pay for professional services, because they see it as a way of getting really fast onboarding times and stuff like that. So we like that. But one of the things we've always been really careful with is we want to make sure that nobody feels like they're being forced to pay for it. It should be something that they want, rather than them feeling like, you're forcing me to pay for this, because then they start to resent you.
Yeah. And do you have any learnings on how much you can charge for services as a function of deal size?
No strict rule of thumb. It kind of comes down on a deal-by-deal basis. I mean, we've got some minimum pricing for professional services by the hour, but it can be built into the discount. Like, I'm with you, like, discounting is bad. It hurts stuff in the long run, but you can kind of throw it in for very large customers and stuff, because like throwing in some professional services at the start is not going to hurt you in the long run. So it is one of those things that you can kind of discount.
I mean, my learning, I don't want to speak too much myself, but in my brief tenure as a VP in the Fortune 500, which was measured in single-digit months, but when I was there and I learned how buying really worked on the other side, what I learned is when any new vendor of any size was put into Ariba, there was an instant add-on for 20% for services. They knew in a 25-year-old software company that there's no way you could bring a product in without services, and if they didn't budget for it in Ariba, they would go over budget, right? Because they would buy these great products and they couldn't implement it, and they'd have to go buy it, and then it's a budget breaker. So if you didn't ask for the 20, small businesses never paid, but if you didn't ask for the 20 on a like 200K and up deal, you're just losing this opportunity to hit the toggle in Ariba. So I don't know, any learnings there?
Yeah, I think that ballpark 20% number is accurate, but this isn't quite pricing. The one thing to be careful about is your board or investors probably have goals for evaluation where you need to watch out for blended gross margins on the company.
Those guys.
So I know, they're real pain in the ass. So you actually, you do want to watch out for, you probably don't as a company, if you're a software company or a SaaS company, want to be very heavy on the
You got to be at least,
services,
you want to be in the
20%
mid-60s or higher for gross margin,
yeah,
right?
So from a revenue perspective on the services, 20% is about right, and to your point, that's about what most enterprises expect to spend to even be successful.
Yeah.
So that's a good ballpark.
Well, I guess the question is, do people even value services from an investor perspective? I mean, my experience is that people just pull it out and throw it out, right? I mean, it's revenue, it's interesting, it's one time, but you're usually getting valued as a multiple of ARR, not necessarily.
But I think one of the things that we all know I think everyone here, to some extent, has slightly non-traditional models, right? The traditional model was I have a set of bits sitting on a server. There's no variable cost. There's no up and down based on usage. It costs this exact amount per month, and that's the nirvana of recurring revenue. But now we have utility pricing, we have API pricing, we have companies with hardware components, we have we have a little IoT here, there. It's all been mixed up. And I think for me, if you get too dogmatic about it, you're leaving money on the table. Because with bigger customers, you have to make them successful. And if they pay you for it, at least you'll fund it better internally, as long as you don't cross this red line of I'm not software anymore, right? I'm a services company. So the investors may say that, but it doesn't mean they're right. And the bigger the public company, you look at Viva, right, which is huge success, all 7-figure deals, it's 30% services. Like, you don't win a $5 million a year contract without rolling up your sleeves and helping with that deployment. You know, maybe, just if you're going to do it for free, you might as well charge for it, right? At a minimum, right? That's the way, those of us that don't anchor high, that's the other way we learn it. It's like, good, you know, we might as well, then they'll pay us. One other, just more, since we're the last session, more of an existential question on pricing. In most startups, everyone wants to talk about pricing. Like, every employee, not every employee knows exactly where the technical debt is or what the biggest customer, but everyone has an opinion on pricing, and it's a great discussion, but it can be debilitating sometimes, right? How do you focus these conversations in your company? How do you speak with data and make the discussions focused rather than have everyone be an armchair quarterback?
It's interesting. So, as an infrastructure company, and I'll be intrigued to hear your answer on this as well. Everyone doesn't really talk about pricing that much because it's a lot of engineers, and they're like, just let the sales guys handle that stuff. I'm not going to worry about it.
All right, so but all the sales guys have an opinion. Everyone on your management team has an opinion, doesn't you? Everyone around the table for your C staff has an opinion, don't they?
They do, and
everyone.
I think that at that point, then the biggest conversation point on the sales team is, why can't I discount more? So you have to constantly beat the drum of every time you discount, you need to sell one more deal or two more deals, et cetera, and that's just even more work for you. So why would you want to do that? And it's the easiest thing, I think, to close a deal for a salesperson is they're like, if I make it cheaper, it'll just sell itself. And so resisting that is not always the most natural thing. So you just really tight controls in place around, like, okay, your frontline salespeople are allowed to discount 5% off list price. Their managers are allowed to discount 5% more if they want to. But then you know that you've bounded by a max of 10%, and that's only if they buy, I don't know, I'm making up numbers, $200,000 worth of the software in the first place.
But if you have the sales folks that instinctively want to discount, right? Don't these yahoos, like your board members, always want you to raise pricing? Because mathematically, the simplest way to grow faster is to raise pricing, right? There's nothing simpler than sitting around a fancy board table or a nice dinner and raising paper prices 40%.
Our head of sales, when he joined about 3 years ago, made a comment where he said, at my last company, I raised prices 30% 1 year. Do you know what happened? We raised revenue by 30%. I think that, especially in this different sale, I mean, the ASP for us is pretty high. But I do think that, you constantly raise prices until you meet that price point that, let me rephrase that. In enterprise software sales, you have very long negotiation cycles. So, I mean, 9-12 months is not uncommon. And so your ability to find out what the market's willing to pay in a very rapid succession is not really feasible. So
very hard. You can't A/B test. You can't. It's hard to do a multivariate test, isn't it?
It takes a long time. So I would say start high because you'll run into resistance at some point.
Yeah.
It's easier to come down than go up.
And have you guys been able to ever do any true multivariate or other testing on pricing? Ever? Right? I'll tell you the first story I heard. When I was learning, I was meeting with the CEO of an early public SaaS company that was doing hundreds of millions of revenue years ago. And I said, how did you come up with the pricing? And it was all SMB, a lot of it self-service. So you figure they have this huge data science team. He said, I wrote it on a napkin at my daughter's bat mitzvah. I made the pricing up, and then every year we raise it 20%, and we measure the churn, and we roll it back if it fails. But even this, the no data. So any science, or is it comps or gut, or what is it? How do you get science behind it?
We do a lot of work on, so our definition of value is how much money does the customer create for themselves minus their cost for that. And
that's everyone's dream, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we add 10 million of value, so it's only $5 million a year.
We spend a lot of time trying to study that value, but the problem is it is on a case-by-case basis. I could imagine a day for some enterprise software companies where it's such unique custom solutions, there's actually no such concept as a list price. Like, why, right? Come in and understand the customer environment.
Accenture.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I know it starts at 20 million a year.
Yeah. It's actually Oracle.
What's that?
Yeah. Oracle's list price for one CPU of their core database is like $225,000 a year, and they just discount down to find the price that makes sense for you.
Yes, you discount right down to an NPS of 0. You take it too far. So any science on pricing for you guys at Fastly or Circle?
Yeah, I mean, we run We run pricing surveys all the time. So.
But is the data any good from these surveys? Do people even answer? Do they even know how to answer the questions? How much more would you like to pay? Is that what you ask them?
Yeah, well, there are
Don't
ways.
ask if you want to pay more or less, just how much more would you like to pay?
You
right?
would be surprised. Actually, people will tell you how much they want to pay and where their sensitivity is, to the point where if the price is too low, they think that the solution isn't appropriate.
So that's
right?
a huge issue, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can accidentally anchor too low and be unvalued.
So you can establish what the pricing box looks like. The other advantage that we have in being SaaS is that we have immediate access to usage data.
Yes.
So we can look at not only survey responses, but we can actually look at how you use a solution, and we can start to establish pricing boxes from that. And then we use that information to try and establish ROI, because for us, it's about developer minutes. So we can figure out exactly what a developer minute is worth, figure out how much they spend on our solution, and then our value is the delta. So it's pretty easy for us, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of having a combined mixed SaaS plus enterprise model, because you can use the data and transfer it across each line of business.
So I mean, I'm imagining, I know you're not public, so I can't look at all your numbers, but I'm imagining you have material COGS, right?
Yeah.
You have material. So how does that play into pricing? So you at least can have some science against your pricing because you know exactly, you know what it costs to spin up whatever it is, 500 bare metal servers to serve all this content. It's not trivial.
Exactly,
right?
and then we know but our servers are actually pretty cheap. I mean, that was one of the things that allowed us to compete against, these incumbents.
Are they so cheap that it doesn't matter from a COGS perspective?
I mean, cheap is relative.
Yes.
I mean, our servers are only $18,000 each, but which it's one of those things you stay, $10,000 here, $10,000 here, it kind of adds up. But we did a whole bunch of stuff that we worked on really early on to make our servers incredibly efficient, and we kind of, using a bit of criminology, we were able to kind of work out how efficient we were compared to some of our competitors and their SEC filings. And so the servers are, we depreciate them over time. We know the cost of those, and then we know the cost of bandwidth, and we know the cost of bandwidth really, to a minute level. And so plugging those things in, we're able to get a really good idea of how much a customer costs us. And then we've got all sorts of things that we can play off against each other, because no two customers are the same. And this is like, what you were talking about with, when it comes to enterprise, it doesn't really make sense to have list pricing, but list pricing really helps the small customers go in. So, we can have a very, very large video customer, and that can offset our bandwidth prices against other stuff. We can keep our 95th percentile down. We want marquee customers coming in and giving us good names.
You want marquee.
Yeah.
But you have to manage the salespeople and other folks so they don't impact the margins?
Yeah, I mean, we've got really good salespeople. They're very, very smart. They've been surprisingly, pleasant. I love working with them. We have really good sales engineers.
Well, because you pay them very well. It's really that they're making a lot of money. That's what it is, right?
They're also good people. We were really lucky early on to get some really, really good salespeople.
Yeah.
As engineers starting in the company, we didn't really know how to set up a sales organization, and we were really lucky to get somebody we knew was in the market, was moving out to the West Coast from the East Coast, came looking for a job, and he was really great at setting everything up, and so that really set us off on the path to success. But we've got the tension, you want a discount, but that has problems going on. But actually, everything seems to have worked out pretty okay. As much, I don't know if it's just because we got really lucky hiring really good people, or just like the market we got into, but everything's actually worked out pretty simply. And I think mostly it's just this underlying data that we have that lets us know how much everybody costs. And so we can make really good predictions on how to price stuff. And then we have a really good pricing council. So
it's good. All right, well, we ran out of time. We ran into the wall. But let's thank our esteemed panel. This was great.